Good morning and welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. I'm Joanne and I'm a software tester at Qdabra. Also with me is Kirby Laborte. She's our support lead. And today we're very excited for this new topic that we're going to show you how you can use one form template across multiple lists. But before we start the presentation, let me launch a quick poll. Thank you for being here today. Just launching a quick poll here. Kirby, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so the first poll is just a quick question to see if you're using SharePoint list forms. And I'm guessing that some of you are using form libraries or SharePoint lists, but you may also have some experience on SharePoint list. So let me check the answers. So no. All right. And the next poll is, do you have an internal, say, HR process that is being used across different departments? Yes, okay, that's good. So in that case, this topic is really interesting. And you may be surprised that there are lots of processes out there, internal or external, where you can use the same form template. For example, there are several departments in your organization that are using the same process for submitting these internal forms: timesheet, leave requests, new user requests, for example, common forms that are used across your organization. And in my illustration here, each departments have their own SharePoint lists, and they would submit to these SharePoint lists, for example, their timesheet. They have their separate SharePoint list for each department. And it is very easy to set up the same SharePoint list across your site. You can save it as a list template and create more lists using that template. However, with this kind of setup, the problem comes when you need to update your list form, because you have to go to each list and edit the form and republish it one by one. So it is hard to maintain. There is extra development effort on your part.
Sorry, Joanne. Are you sharing your screen? I'm still seeing the last poll.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you see my screen now?
No, not yet.
Yet? Let me fix that. Sorry about that.
Yes, I can see it now.
All right. So with this kind of setup, it is hard to maintain. There is extra development effort, and it will take up valuable time from your team who could otherwise focus on other important tasks, right? And it is prone to inconsistency because you need to update each of these list forms that are used by these departments across your organization. So the solution to that problem is, if you have FormsViewer, there's no need to use separate list forms. If you have multiple SharePoint lists with identical columns, we recommend using just one form, and you can upload that list form to FormsViewer and have the SharePoint list reference it from there. And this will help you to reduce your maintenance effort, ensure consistency, and help you to easily migrate your forms to another site. So in this demo, I'm going to show you how this technique can be done. I'll use one form for multiple SharePoint lists. Let's say these departments, HR, marketing, finance, operations, are using the same form for submitting a request for a new user account. So if you want to try this technique, what do you need? You need SharePoint lists with identical columns, and you also need FormsViewer version 5.1 and up. So I'll now proceed with my demo. So this is that one form template that we're going to use. So just click Open Form in FormsViewer, and it will show us this form. It looks like a regular form now because I modified the layout, but it is really a list form. And in my site contents here, I have already set up the lists to be used by each departments, and these are already configured to use that list form. So let's say I want to use the marketing department list form. Create a new item. Let's switch to classic mode first. Like a new item. And I'm going to fill this out. But before that, I'll show you what else is happening in the background. So I have a debug slider here to open up the QRules commands that are being run. So the key for this technique starts with this get input parameter. So it will get the sphost parameter. Sphost is the parameter to get the site where FormsViewer is installed. So this is that value. And another one is to get the parameter for the list name. So as you can see, it did get the correct list name, new user request marketing. And here I'm just getting the parameter also for the template name, just to make sure that we're using that same template, new user request list form. And then I'm using the change connection URL command. This command allows you to change the connection of the form dynamically. So in this example, we're using one single form, right? And the main data connection in this form is already pointing to a specific SharePoint list. But since we want to use this form across multiple lists, we're using that command to change the main data connection and repoint that to the list where the form is opened. So we have data source name here, URL parameter list name parameter. It's basically the perfect recipe to fire the change connection URL command. And it's like telling QRules, hey, this is where I want to submit this form. So I hope that part is clear. I'm going to fill out my form. Okay. Submit. And this is the one that I submitted. I can click on the item link to open the list form, and it will query that item for me, and I can make some edits. For example, I can change this value and resubmit it. Okay. Then I can go to another SharePoint list. For example, I'll go to the new user request for finance department. Click new item. And as you can see, this is also using the same list form. This is the template, new user request list form, but it is pointing now to a different list name here. So let's try to submit. Uh, So that's basically it. It looks really simple, but in reality, SharePoint has really no feature to allow you to do that. And these are the kind of scenarios where FormsViewer can really help you. So I'm now going to show you how I apply this technique. So you need to go to your SharePoint root site, and in the package we're sending you, you'll find this new user request as TP. Locate that and then go to site settings in your SharePoint root site. Under web designer galleries, go to list templates, click files tab, upload a document, and then choose that file, the STP file, and upload it here. But in my site, I have already uploaded that list template. Let's see. So I can reuse this template across my site. And this template already has that list form that is already customized for this technique. Okay, so next is you need to create a new list out of that list template. So go to your site contents, select app. Okay, let's find that new user request. And then in this case, I want to use or create a new list for the HR department. Create. Wait. And I'll go to that list. Next, we need to create or customize the list form info path. So copy the URL in the browser and open that in Internet Explorer. You might be wondering why Internet Explorer. We're already using Chrome, right? Because Internet Explorer is the only browser that allows customizing in InfoPath. So if I go to the list tab, there's a customize in InfoPath feature here. And if I go back in Chrome, I'll show you in a second. If I click here, this is Chrome, right? It says Internet Explorer is required to use this feature. So it's not supported in Chrome, so we'll just use Internet Explorer for this. Wait a second, I'll just close my template here. I click customize in info path, click allow yes to that if you're prompted. And the form will open in InfoPath Designer, and this form already has the form logic. If you're applying this to, or this technique to your own form, you need to copy the logic, and you can find it under Qdabra rules finish loading node. So remember that this already has curls injected in it, so if your forms does not have curls yet, you need to inject it with curls in FormsViewer. So these are the rules. So for the technique part, this is it starts here. So it determines the SharePoint URL using the get input parameter command. It will get the value for that SP host URL key, and it will paste that value in a placeholder field in an XML data connection, which is also in this list form. Then it will get the list name value, also putting that in a placeholder field, and the template name. By the way, this is not necessary. I just like to add that just to make sure, or to show you that we're using the same template. And then change connection command. So here, this is the command we're using. Just make sure that these fields are pointing to the correct placeholder fields. And then lastly, there's a query item rule here that is checking if the ID field under the query fields section is not blank. So this is for querying an existing item. If users would try to open an existing list item, this rule will run. Then it will query the main data connection. So that's it. Just save this file. Just going to overwrite my sample form there and upload that to FormsViewer. And then after that, find the fvlinks JS file in the package, open that in a notepad. Okay. And so this is the JavaScript to customize the list, the SharePoint list, so it opens in FormsViewer. So the parameters that you need to edit are query string, template name, FormsViewer domain, and isList. So let's start with query string. So the query string, I've already placed the other two parameters here that you'll need for this technique. So you'll need fv skip list item load equals to true, and I'm going to explain that to you in a bit. And then also the list name parameter. So for the list name parameter, you need to put your list name here. Oh, why am I typing? Okay, new user request HR. Okay, and then we'll enter the template name. Make sure that this matches the template name that you used when you uploaded the form template in FormsViewer. That's really important. So that's new user request list form right there. And then change the FormsViewer domain if you're not using qfs.formsco.com. If you used a customized, or if you're using your own domain for that, then change this. And then just change this value to true, because we're applying this to a SharePoint list. And then before we save that, go back to the upload template page, click open form, copy the URL in the browser and paste that in a notepad, and copy everything after the question mark, starting from SP host URL up to the end, and copy and paste it at the very beginning of the query string. So that completes your query string. So I'll save it using a unique JS file name because we're having different or multiple departments, right? Okay, and go to your site contents, site assets. And let's upload it here. Okay, after uploading that, go to the SharePoint list. Okay, and click edit page. edit the web part, expand miscellaneous, and you'll see that I already have the JS link set up here. So that's why it's important that you put or upload the JS file under site assets. Otherwise, you need to change the path here. So just make sure that we're using the correct file name, new user request hr.js, and we're using site. If you're using a site collection, then you need to edit this part, change that to site collection. But since I'm just using a site, I'll leave that as is and click apply. And okay, so that will load that JavaScript in this page. Stop editing. And so let's try it. Let's click new item. And it's opening our list form. So correct list name here, and the template name is correct as well. So let's try to submit. And submit it. All right, so going back to my slide. So this technique is all made possible by the new parameter called FVSkipListItemLoad. Before this parameter is added to FormsViewer, list forms will always attempt to load the list item before any rules can run, which means that we can't run any rules to repoint the form's data connections before the item query happens. Now that this parameter is added to FormsViewer, you can specify the FVSkipListItemLoad in your query string, and when this parameter is specified with a value true along with a list item ID, then FormsViewer will not attempt to query the item and will instead place the specified ID in the main data connections ID query field. And that allows us to run the rules needed to repoint the main data connection. So I hope that part is clear. Quick recap of what we did to configure the list to use one form. We created the SharePoint list using the template STP file that we provided you, which already has the customized list form and all the form logic there. So just grab the list form, and if you're using your own list form, then copy the form logic from there. Then in IE, click Customize in Info Path to open the list form, then save it and upload to FormsViewer, and then configure the FB links, JavaScript, complete the required parameters there. By the way, the package also has the documentation for that. You can check that out. And then after configuring the JavaScript, upload that to site assets. Then lastly, just edit the SharePoint list web part and apply the JS file there. And that's it. No coding required. It's very easy. Yeah. So the bonus part is that we have a Curls debug slider that we showed you earlier. This is a new cool CSS trick that we're sharing now. It's now more easier to debug your forms with this slider. Let me quickly show you this here. So if you want to learn more about what we did to this CSS, you can export the CSS file and the JavaScript file for that transitioning effect. Just export these files to your local drive and open them in Notepad. And yeah, so those files, we're loading them also using Curl's command called load resource here in finish loading. Okay, so that's the bonus part. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat window. And while we're waiting for the questions, I'll pass the mic to Kirby, and she'll talk a little bit more about FormsViewer. Kirby?
Yep. So we'd like to take this chance to introduce FormsViewer. So for those of you who haven't heard about FormsViewer, it's the only app out there that will migrate your InfoPath form templates as is. That means you do not need to rebuild them. It also lets you continue your InfoPath investment because, as you've already know, support for InfoPath will end in 2026. And our goal is to help companies using InfoPath to keep their investment. And we're continuously updating this app to provide you more handy features that can help extend your forms. In fact, we just launched FormsViewer version 5.1. We have lots of cool features that you may be interested in, like generating PDF copy of your forms, submitting repeating data to lists, making your forms look good on mobile with the help of CSS, and so much more. So we encourage you to check it out. It's now available in the SharePoint App Store. And if you need help with your existing form projects, or if you're planning to migrate your InfoPath forms, just drop us an email at support@qdabra.com, and we'd be happy to help. And we also encourage you to take this survey after this webinar. Let us know if today's topic is helpful to you, and if you want to hear other topics that you'd like to learn, so we can help you build your forms.
Thanks, Kirby. And thank you all so much for being here today. We look forward to sending you the package. If you need help on setting it up, just let us know. And hope you guys are having a wonderful summer. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.